Hello, my name's Craig Olson. I'm the president of the Wisconsin Cross Country Coaches Association. The purpose of this presentation is to discuss the removal of cross country from competitive balance. I coach cross country at Menominee High School up here in the Northwoods, and I will be going through our proposal. Our proposal is to remove cross country from competitive balance, which would require an amendment to the Constitution in this case. Article 3, Section 3, Clause B of the WIA Constitution. As most of you know, swimming and diving are exempt from competitive balance, as is track and field for various reasons. We would like cross country to be exempt as well. The principal argument is the co-ed nature of our sport and the commonality we have with track and field. I'm going to give some background as to what we see, a little bit of history, how did we get where we are, talk a little bit about the problem, and then talk about the arguments we're seeing against our position. First, there are just over 10,500 high school cross country runners in Wisconsin. There's 426 boys teams, 424 girls teams. There are 3 divisions, about 300 schools in Division 2 and 3. Of those 300 schools, only 3 of them have separate coaches for boys and girls. You athletic directors watching this know you treat your boys and girls cross country programs as one program, same budget, same buses, same transportation, same meets. Every meet we go to it has boys and girls races, including the state meet, which is co-ed, with the boys races and the girls races occurring at the same event. Our major opposition to competitive balance is due to the co-ed nature of our sport. A little background, as you all know, a company called School Perceptions did a terrific survey and gathered wonderful data. Over 1,000 school administrators were surveyed, including superintendents, principals, and athletic directors. The results of that survey are significant. As you can see, 68% of respondents believed there was a competitive equity problem in Wisconsin. The Competitive Balance Committee was formed, taking this to account, and they began the very serious work of coming up with a solution. However, when we parsed the data further, cross country was a sport that did not have a perception of competitive inequity. This was by administrators as well, not by coaches. Basketball and football were the 2 sports that had the biggest perception of inequity, not cross country. Cross country was one of the least. When we parse this out further by gender, administrators said 11% girls and 11% boys for competitive equity issues. So cross country is not one of the main sports that has a problem with competitive equity. When we surveyed our own coaches, not administrators, but our own coaches, only 13% of our coaches association wishes to remain with competitive balance. 87% of our association members do, and we have over 320 members, we do not want to be a part of competitive balance anymore. When we surveyed all coaches in the state, 70% of cross-country coaches were opposed to cross-country, 14% were indifferent, and 16% liked it. We can't find more than 19% that think there is a competitive equity issue, and no more than 16% of the coaches in this survey thought we should be in competitive balance. Those numbers are quite overwhelming. And again, this was a wonderful data set through the School Perception Survey. 87% of the coaches in our Coaches Association would like to remove cross-country from competitive balance. The principal reason, again, is the co-ed nature of our sport. We looked at every team that has won a state title, the socioeconomic status of those teams, public, private. We just don't perceive that we have a competitive equity issue in our sport. The Competitive Balance Committee did the great work of coming up with a formula, and they used Ohio and Colorado as models. Ohio does not include cross-country and competitive balance. Doing so is complicated because we are co-ed. Colorado does not include cross-country and competitive balance. In fact, this year we sent 2 officers of our association to the Colorado Clinic to talk about classification in Colorado. There will be some adjustments in Colorado based on socioeconomic status, and sometimes teams are moved down. But there isn't a performance factor that we're finding in Colorado either. So, as a summary, obviously there was an issue with competitive balance, but that issue is largely absent in cross-country. Cross-country coaches don't think there's a competitive equity problem. And even the 2 states we use as a model for our own competitive balance formulas do not include cross-country. Our biggest concern is the splitting of teams with boys and girls going to different sectionals from the same school. So this is our problem. A split squad is when the boys go to one sectional and the girls go to another. This is a significant concern. As it was, nearly all sectionals were on Saturday. A handful of schools could have sectionals on Friday, or did, because of various concerns or considerations. But nearly all sectionals took place on Saturday. The WIA, to alleviate our concern, moved the Division II sectionals to Friday, but this was a Band-Aid that didn't fully address the issue. If you are a very good boys Division II program and you're promoted to Division I, but your girls are still in Division II, your boys will compete on Saturday in a Division I sectional, and your girls will compete on Friday in a Division II sectional. And we don't really like that. We want our teams at the same meets on the same day, enjoying the moment together. We view our teams, as do all coaches, as families. And we want our team, and in many cases, we have families on the team, brothers and sisters who are competing. And we want our families to stay together as much as we can, our teams to be together as much as we can. No other state that we can find, and we tried to parse through shows a separation of boys and girls from the same school for sectional placement. We looked at every state in the country. We tried to determine if there was any state out there that had a good model of how we could do this, and there just isn't any state that separates its boys and girls. We couldn't find an instance of a state that promoted cross-country based on performance points other than Nevada, and they're required to move boys and girls up together from the same school to Title IX. California is a little bit weird. They have regions that are allowed to kind of make these decisions. But again, we're not seeing boys and girls teams moved up separately. You can click on the link on this proposal if you so choose and gain access to that information. So here's a typical, oh, by the way, the NCAA also doesn't move teams up separately. The Badger men and women run at the same regional before they get to nationals. The national meets at the same location for men and women as well. Same thing with all divisions. So the NAIA, the NCAA, and every other state will not separate its boys and girls or men's and women's teams for a sectional or a regional or national meet. Let's just say a team has earned enough points for their boys to move up to D1, and the girls are still in D2, and the head coach is responsible for both. This is going to happen to a school next year, by the way, unless we can get some relief. The girls squad is going to leave Friday at 2 a.m. to drive about 90 minutes to go to a sectional. They're going to race at 5 o'clock. Awards will finish after 6:30, maybe 7 o'clock. They're going to get on the bus, stop for dinner, and then they're going to drive home and maybe get home around 9 or 9:30. The coach is going to leave his boys at home. He's not going to want them out running around in the cold the night before a meet. He's going to want them to rest. He's going to miss out on his very last practice with his boys. For his senior boys, will be the last practice of their careers. That last great moment together, and that moment will be lost, and you don't get those moments back. The girls will not have their boys' team to cheer them on. They won't have the parents of their boys either, so they're missing half of their cheering section. And if the girls get awards or go to state, the boys will miss that moment too, for the pictures and the hugs and the joy of the moment, because the boys won't be there. The very next morning at 7:30, the coach will get back to school and he'll load up the bus and put the tent and the equipment on, and he'll drive 2 hours to a Division I sectional where his boys will compete. This is an awful lot to ask of a coach. Now, I asked some coaches who had split squads this year to give me some quotes. Here was a great one, and it's kind of gut-wrenching to read. The week of sectionals, which is usually a fun week of practice, was a significant challenge. With our team racing 2 different days, it was very difficult to manage the schedules in order to prepare our one team, which became 2 teams, for 2 different days of racing. Juggling different speed days, long runs, visualization, and goal setting was nearly impossible. Our team didn't get to have their last team meal together. Instead, the team was split in half. I kept my boys at home for the girls' sectional and missed their last practice. I missed their last team meal because I was with girls at their race. The tug of war of that week, the guilt and worry about how my time was divided, it was very tough. Another team, I asked a coach to walk me through what he experienced. Asking a head coach in charge of both genders to change up the training plan and break up training groups and team meals the week of sectionals to prep for 2 separate qualifying meets on 2 different days is stressful and unfair to all the athletes within those programs. It's also an extra financial burden placed on many of those promoted teams, coaches, schools, and families. As a non-faculty coach, I had used more vacation time for Friday sectional, as did many parents. By the way, this team had never done well or better than 9th state over the 3 years. It had earned performance points, and it was promoted despite only being 9th because it won 3 sectional meets. So splitting our boys and girls up is a major problem and frustration for our coaches. It's not done anywhere else, university, high schools, any state. No one does this except us. Now, here are the arguments we're hearing against our position. First, well, you've had split squads before. Second, this will hurt competitive balance for other sports and kind of disrupt the whole system. And lastly, well, we just need more data. Split squads. There have been split squads in the past, but they are exceedingly rare. The most common example is Colby-Abbotsford. Colby-Abbotsford co-ops for boys, which bumps them up to D2, but their girls do not, so their girls are D3. The coach has spent a lot of time making this work, working with his parents, working with the schools, and making sure that he hosts sectionals so he has a little bit of relief, doesn't have to travel as much. They make it work. But this is a very, very, very rare situation. And there are very few times when the smallest D1 girls program might have the largest D2 boys program, depending on the total number of boys programs in D1. So we have historically had one or two teams in the entire history of cross country that has had to split squad a handful of years, 2 or 3 years total. This is nothing like what is affecting our sport now, where 12 to 14, 15 teams are having to split squad. The second argument we're hearing is that if we remove cross country from competitive balance, this will hurt competitive balance. First, cross country is more complicated. It's co-ed. It's not tournament bracketed. This is a completely different animal. All sports are different, as we know, and all sports should be treated differently. Second, the competitive balance system, as it's written, is quite sound for the team bracketed sports. Removing cross country should do nothing to affect that. Third, our teams are families. And if the argument is that we need to suffer and have our teams separated so we can shore up a competitive balance system for other sports, that is to completely ignore what we as a cross-country association need and what we're looking out for with our 10,500 athletes. Also, I really think removing cross-country from competitive balance will very much help competitive balance because they can be more focused without having to figure out how to create a model that incorporates cross-country, which doesn't really fit well into these models because we're co-ed. Lastly, we're hearing a lot of superintendents, administrators, and athletic directors saying, we just don't have the data. We have done our diligence. We've looked at every state. We've looked at the college and university level. We've looked at every team that's won a state title in the past 30 years. We've surveyed every coach. We've asked everyone that we can talk to about this. And our data is overwhelming, very much overwhelming. The original school perceptions data that came out, that was overwhelming as well. But to focus on one part of the data, the fact that we need competitive balance in this state because of competitive equity issues, but to ignore the other part of the data, which says that cross-country shouldn't really be a part of this, is to cherry pick data. And that's not what we're doing. We're examining all the data. And I think people who say, well, we need more data are just disagreeing with the data that is out there and ignoring what we have. So to summarize, we are asking for your support, athletic directors. Please help us out. 87% of the coaches in our association, this is your coaches, these are the experts in this sport, the people who live and breathe this sport every day. We would like to be removed from competitive balance. We represent 10,500 athletes, over 420 programs, and we don't want our boys and girls separated. We want to keep our families together, and we need your help and support. If you have any questions, please call or text or email. I'd be happy to talk to you about this further. Thank you very much for your time.